Book 6, Coffee and Confessions. A short and steamy curvy girl romance by Everly True. A Coral Bay short romance series. Chapter 1. No cream, just heat. Nora James had kissed a few frogs in her time, but none of them had Ethan Walker's jawline, or that sinfully deep voice that wrapped around her name like a silk ribbon, which made it more dangerous that he was now back in Coral Bay, freshly single, freshly smoldering, and freshly seated at the counter of her coffee shop, like nothing had ever happened. Same crooked grin, same storm blue eyes, same frustrating off-limit status. He was her best friend's older brother, and Coral Bay's most distracting complication. Nora poured a slow stream of coffee into his mug, refusing to meet his gaze. Didn't expect to see you back here. Didn't expect to come back, he said, voice low and rough, like gravel smoothed by honey. But you know how family is. She glanced at him then and immediately wished she hadn't, because the Ethan in her memories wasn't this solid, wasn't this broad-shouldered, tan and walking sin in slacks. Wasn't this man who was now watching her like she was the main event? Real estate? She asked, aiming for casual and missing by a mile. That what brought you home? Temporarily. He stirred his coffee without looking away. Taking over Dad's office while he recovers. It's a lot of paper and not enough coffee. I could double the espresso, she offered, lips twitching. He smiled slowly, teasing like he knew her secrets. I don't need caffeine, he said, leaning in. Not when I've got cinnamon and heat first thing in the morning. She froze. Her breath caught. Because cinnamon was her favorite lotion, warm, spicy, subtle. And the last time someone noticed it? Never. Her fingers fumbled the dish rag. It hit the floor with a soft plop. Ethan's gaze dipped to where she bent to grab it, and when she stood, his eyes didn't immediately meet hers. They lingered, on her waist, her hips, and the curve of her neckline beneath the soft cotton of her shirt. Still feisty, he said, finally meeting her gaze. Still off limits, she replied, trying to sound unaffected. But her voice was breathier than she wanted, and her cheeks were flushing under his stare. The bell over the door chimed, breaking the spell as a rush of air swept through the cafe. Nora blinked, heart pounding. She reached for the sugar jar that didn't need moving and cleared her throat. How long are you in town? He stood, setting down a bill with a quiet clink. Long enough to stir up a little trouble. Great, she muttered, grabbing his mug before she could say anything stupid. Just what I needed. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Nora? She looked up. His eyes raked over her, slow and deliberate. You still smell like cinnamon. Then he was gone, and Nora James, owner of the coziest cafe in Coral Bay, was left holding an empty mug, her heart thudding in her chest, and the terrifying realization that the man she shouldn't want was the only one she couldn't stop thinking about. Chapter 2. Stirred, not settled. Rain slicked the windows as Nora flipped the cafe sign to closed. She didn't expect him to still be there. But there he was seated in the corner, with a book he hadn't touched, and a look that made her pulse skip. Are you waiting on something? She asked, heart thudding. He stood slowly, towering over her in that maddeningly tailored button-down. Just wanted to see if the cinnamon still tastes as good as it smells. Her cheeks flamed. Ethan. I know, he said, voice low. You're not mine to want and off limits, but I've wanted you anyway. One step brought him closer, another, and she was backed up against the espresso machine. His hand hovered near her waist, not touching. Tell me to stop, he said. She didn't. He kissed her like he'd been dreaming about it for years. Slow, hot, reverent. Her hands slid up his chest, fingers finding the firm muscle beneath. And when he lifted her onto the prep counter, his hips pressing between her thighs, she had let out a sound that definitely wasn't coffee shop appropriate. They didn't go all the way. But it wasn't just kissing either. It was confessions whispered between gasps, fingers curled in hair, breath shared like oxygen, a brush of her hand against his chest that made him hiss her name like a prayer. He kissed her forehead before he left. She didn't sleep a wink. Chapter 3. Burnt edges, bold moves. Things didn't go back to normal. Ethan still came into the shop, still ordered black coffee. But now his eyes lingered too long, and her hands shook too easily when she poured milk for customers. They hadn't talked about it, hadn't crossed the line again, until her best friend found out. "You hooked up with Ethan?" Cassie hissed, eyes wide in disbelief as she slammed the cafe's backroom door shut behind her. Nora nearly dropped the stack of pastry boxes she was carrying. "It was one kiss," she whispered, avoiding eye contact. Cassie narrowed her eyes. "You don't kiss someone like that unless it's everything." Nora's cheeks burned. "It didn't mean anything. I mean, it wasn't supposed to." Cassie folded her arms. "Nora, come on. I know that look. That I kissed him, and now I'm thinking about it every time I butter toast look." Nora groaned and leaned against the counter. "Ugh, it wasn't just a kiss, okay? It was heat and history and hormones all colliding at once." "And coffee breath," Cassie added dryly. Nora snorted. "Mint gum, I swear." Cassie stared at her for a long beat, then sighed. "You really like him?" "I always have." That quiet truth sat between them like a full mug waiting to spill. Cassie exhaled, softer this time. "Then don't lie to me about it. But more importantly, don't lie to yourself." Nora blinked. "You're not mad?" "I'm your best friend, not your parole officer. But just know if he hurts you, I'll replace his coffee with decaf. Forever." That night, Nora went to the real estate office. He was there tie loose, sleeves rolled, jaw tense. "I can't stop thinking about you," she said. He looked up, tired. "Then why have you been ignoring me?" "Because I thought I wasn't enough." He stood, storm in his eyes. "You've always been enough." The office was quiet as he crossed the room, slow and certain. This time, there was no hesitation. He kissed her like she belonged to him, like she'd always belonged. And when he backed her into the conference room table, hands sliding up her thighs and lips finding the hollow of her throat, she whispered his name like it was hers too. Epilogue. Brewed just right. At the next Women's Circle brunch, Nora brought snickerdoodle muffins and a glow that no one missed. Addie raised an eyebrow. "New recipe?" "New something," Nora said, smiling behind her coffee. Jake walked in a minute later, dropping a kiss to Addie's temple. "Ethan's locking up. He'll be here soon." Across the table, Savannah winked. "You going to confess over pastries?" Nora just laughed and reached for another muffin. Outside, Ethan waved through the window, his shirt rumpled and eyes only for her. The stories in Coral Bay always brew slow, but when they hit just right, they lingered long after the last drop. The end and the beginning. Next up in Curves Ahead, Off Limits, a note from Everly True. Thank you for spending your evening in Coral Bay. Thanks for listening to the Coffee and Confessions. If you love this curvy, steamy small-town romance, you can grab a copy of the ebook on Amazon. Subscribe for weekly romance audiobooks and short reads. I post new stories every week. Follow LeVar Romance on Facebook. Follow LeVar Romance on Instagram.